I used to imagine that if my marriage ever crumbled, it would be due to something monumental, some undeniable betrayal or a devastating truth that left no room for second chances. I pictured uncovering evidence, maybe catching her slipping out of a hotel with another man, or stumbling upon messages on her phone that shattered my trust beyond repair. But the reality was far more subtle and, in some ways, more painful. Our marriage didn't fall apart in a dramatic scene. It ended quietly, in a ballroom lit by glittering chandeliers, accompanied by the soft rhythm of a live band. The most heartbreaking part? She didn't even bother to conceal it. It was at a charity gala, one of those upscale soirees that Marjorie adored and often insisted I attend. I never found joy in them, but I tagged along because making her happy mattered to me. I wasn't the kind of husband to hover or question her every move. I believed in giving her space, in building a relationship based on trust. But trust, I've learned, is delicate. That evening, she shattered it with a single dance. That night began like many others. We walked into the event dressed to the nines. Marjorie was breathtaking, as always, wrapped in a deep green gown that accentuated every graceful curve. She had a way of capturing attention without even trying, a magnetic presence that once made me proud. Her fingers intertwined with mine as we entered, greeting acquaintances with laughter and warmth. It felt routine, just another evening where I played the supporting role while she lit up the room. And then he appeared. At first, I didn't recognize him. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and moved through the crowd with practiced ease, as though he belonged there. The moment Marjorie saw him, something in her eyes shifted. Just for an instant, a brief flicker of joy, but I caught it. Before I could say a word, she slipped away. And the next thing I knew, she was dancing with him, lost in the music as if the rest of the world had faded away. As if I had faded away. That dance lasted a lifetime in my mind. I stood rooted in place, watching the woman I loved melt into someone else's embrace. It wasn't just the dance. It was how effortlessly they moved together, the way their bodies seemed to know each other, the way she gazed up at him with a playful, tender smile. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in what felt like forever. As the music slowed, so did the beat of my heart. My hands balled into fists, not from rage, but from a crushing awareness. This wasn't an innocent moment. This wasn't the beginning. It had already begun long before that night. I was just finally seeing it. Around me, the gala continued, laughter, conversations, clinking glasses, no one noticing the storm that had erupted inside me. I felt invisible, like I had already been erased from her life, and she hadn't even looked back. And then it hit me. She had already moved on from me. She just hadn't said the words out loud. That realization changed everything. I could have confronted her on the spot. I could have stormed onto the dance floor, pulled her away, demanded an explanation. But what would it have changed? Her choice had already been made, even if she hadn't fully admitted it to herself yet. So I made mine. Without a word, I turned and left. I didn't just walk away from the music or the party, I walked away from her. She had no idea how deeply she would regret what she had done. As I stepped out of that grand ballroom, I kept my head high, even though my world was crumbling from within. Each stride felt like I was leaving fragments of my life behind, falling away like shards of something once whole. I didn't glance back to see if she noticed. I didn't pause, hoping she'd follow. Deep down, I already knew she wouldn't. Not yet. When I handed my valet ticket to the attendant, he gave me a curious look. Maybe he noticed the tightness in my jaw or the tension in my clenched hands. Or maybe I was imagining things, my thoughts spiraling too fast, trying to make sense of what had just happened. By the time my car pulled around, my mind was made up. I wasn't going home. That place no longer felt like home, not with her still there. So I drove. Not aimlessly, and not driven by rage, but with a clear, cold focus. I needed distance, clarity, a place to breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I ended up at a quiet diner on the edge of town, the kind with worn-out booths and a waitress who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. I slid into a booth, ordered a cup of coffee I didn't even want, and stared at the steam swirling above it, hoping to find some kind of answer. How long had this been going on? How long had I played the fool while she danced through some secret fantasy, right under my nose? My stomach turned at the thought. It wasn't just about that dance. It was the absence, the way she looked at him, and more importantly, the way she no longer looked at me. That gaze, the one filled with warmth and connection, had disappeared months ago. Had I really missed all the signs? I began piecing together the subtle shifts, the late nights she never used to have, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the fact that her phone had become a permanent fixture by her side. The clues had always been right in front of me, laid out like scattered puzzle pieces, but I had been too naive, too trusting, to see how they fit together. I inhaled deeply, trying to push down the fury building inside. I wasn't someone who let emotions take over, but I also wasn't someone who let himself be treated like a fool. I pulled out my phone, pausing as my thumb hovered over her contact. I could call her, demand an explanation. But what would that really bring? More hollow excuses? Another carefully crafted lie? I wasn't going to give her that opportunity. Instead, I scrolled past all the recent calls and texts until I found a name I hadn't touched in years, Nathan. My oldest friend, the one who never sugarcoated anything, even when the truth cut deep. I tapped the call button. He picked up after the second ring. Elliot? Wow, it's been ages. What's going on? I only hesitated for a heartbeat before saying the words out loud, forcing them into existence. Nate, she's been unfaithful. There was a long pause on the other end, a silence so loud it echoed. Then came a deep sigh. Where are you? I told him the name of the diner. Stay put. I'm on my way. I ended the call and stared out the window, catching a glimpse of myself reflected in the glass. I had walked away from that ballroom, from the moment I realized what was happening, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. This wasn't just about walking away. It was about making sure she realized exactly what she had thrown away. Nathan arrived just under 30 minutes later. His truck pulled up to the near-empty lot, and he entered the diner with the same no-nonsense confidence I remembered. He scanned the room, locked eyes with me, and slid into the booth without saying a word. After signaling for a coffee, he leaned forward. Tell me everything, he said in a voice that was steady but firm. I clutched the warm mug in front of me, holding on like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. We were at that charity gala Marjorie always insists we attend. Everything seemed fine at first, but then some guy appeared. I clenched my jaw and shook my head. I don't even know who he was, but the way she looked at him, it was like I wasn't even there. Nathan stayed silent, letting me speak without interruption as I recounted the way she danced with the man, how she practically melted into him, like she had finally found where she belonged. She didn't glance back even once, didn't check to see if I was still in the room or if I was watching. How long do you think it's been going on? He eventually asked. I let out a long breath. That's what's eating me alive. I have no idea. But all the signs were there. I just chose to ignore them. Nathan leaned closer, his eyes shadowed with seriousness. You don't need a timeline. What matters now is what you plan to do. That was the real question, the one I'd been avoiding. What was next for me? I had spent years building a life with Marjorie, trusting her, loving her. But that one moment on the dance floor had cracked something in me that might never be whole again. I dragged a hand down my face, feeling the weight of everything. I honestly don't know. I left. She hasn't tried to contact me yet. Nathan gave a cynical laugh. Of course she hasn't. She's probably still at that gala, caught up in her fantasy world. She doesn't think there are consequences. His words hit like a punch because they were true. Marjorie hadn't chased after me. She didn't even notice when I walked out. In her mind, I was still waiting for her. Still the loyal husband who'd pretend nothing happened and carry on as usual. She had no idea what was coming. Nathan leaned back and took a sip of coffee. So what's your next move? I stared into my cup, watching the surface ripple slightly. I'm going home, I said after a pause. But not to confront her. Not to argue. I'm going to make my own decisions. If she thought I'd just sit back and wait while she figured things out, she was mistaken. I was about to take control of the situation in a way she never saw coming. Driving back, a strange sense of calm settled over me. But under that calm, something much stronger stirred. Anger, heartbreak, humiliation. All of it burned deep inside. But now, there was also clarity. Focus. Marjorie made her choice when she lost herself in another man's arms, when she treated me like I was nothing more than an invisible backdrop to her perfect night. What she didn't realize was that I had made my choice, too. As I pulled into the driveway, the house sat in complete darkness. I paused for a moment, hands clenched on the steering wheel, bracing for what I might find. Was she already home, acting like everything was fine? Or still dancing the night away, blissfully unaware that her husband had walked out of her life? The moment I stepped inside, I knew. Silence filled the space, untouched and heavy. Her purse wasn't on the entryway table where she always tossed it. The heels she normally abandoned by the door were nowhere to be seen. She hadn't returned. Oddly enough, I didn't feel a surge of rage. Instead, there was a chilling sense of certainty. She hadn't called. Not even a single text. No empty excuse. Not a word asking where I had gone. That moment confirmed everything I needed. I moved slowly through the house, each step sounding louder in the heavy stillness. The atmosphere had shifted. It no longer felt like home. Maybe it wasn't just the house that felt off. Maybe Marjorie herself no longer fit here. I headed straight to the bedroom, opened the closet, and stared at the organized rows of our clothes, my tailored suits, her carefully chosen dresses, a neat display of a life once shared. I reached for a duffel bag and began packing, not with the intention of taking it all, at least not yet. Just enough to send a clear message that I wasn't going to sit back and wait for her to decide when it was time to come home. I packed some clothes, necessary items, and my laptop. At the nightstand, I grabbed documents, my passport, financial records, the kind of essentials a person needs when taking charge of their life again. When I finished, the room appeared untouched to a casual observer, but everything had changed because I had changed. With the duffel slung over one shoulder, I walked out, locking the door behind me like someone sealing off a part of the past that no longer had a place in the present. Nathan didn't ask questions when I arrived just before midnight, carrying only the bag. He simply stepped aside and opened his door. "Spare rooms down the hall," he said, motioning with a nod. But I dropped the bag beside the couch. "I won't be staying long. Just need space to clear my head." Nathan didn't respond with hollow comfort or probing questions. That wasn't his way. Instead, he walked into the kitchen, returned with 2 beers, and handed me one. "She call you yet?" he asked. I shook my head and took a sip. "No." He let out a breath, a sound that said everything. "Figures. She's probably still at the party. Or with that guy." His words didn't hit me the way they might have before. I had already entertained those thoughts, already worked through the sting. I don't care where she is right now. What matters is what I do next. Nathan studied me for a long second before giving a nod. "So what's the plan?" I leaned forward, resting my arms on my knees, feeling the full weight of it all settle. I need to uncover the truth. Who he is. How long this has been going on. Whether there's more to it than just that night. Nathan gave a crooked smile. "So you're looking to get the full story before making your move?" A quiet, dry chuckle escaped me. "Something like that. I won't just confront her. I want to make sure she has nowhere to hide when I do." Morning arrived faster than expected, though I hadn't gotten any sleep. I sat alone in the guest room, lit only by the soft glow of my laptop screen, tracing the outlines of a crumbling marriage. Still no word from Marjorie. No call. No message. No sign she even noticed I was gone. That silence spoke volumes. Nathan knocked gently before stepping inside with a mug in hand. He took one look at me and shook his head. "Did you get any rest?" "No time," I said, accepting the coffee and turning the screen so he could see. "Look at this." The display showed the gala's guest list, which I had found through the charity's public site. I had scrutinized every name, every link, until one stood out. "Benjamin Caldwell," I said. Nathan gave a low whistle. "Haven't heard that name in ages." I turned to him sharply. "You know him?" "Yeah," Nathan said, scratching his jaw. "Real estate guy. Smooth talker. He was married, but his wife left about a year ago. Word is, he couldn't stay faithful." I clenched my jaw. "Sounds about right." Nathan watched me closely. "So what now?" I leaned back slowly. "I'm not going in blind. I want to know everything before I confront her." He thought for a moment, then offered, "I might know someone who could help." By noon, I was sitting in a quiet cafe with a man named Lucas, a friend of Nathan's who specialized in digging up truths people tried to hide. After a few taps on his phone, Lucas set it down and said, "Give me 24 hours. If she's been hiding something, I'll find it." I shook his hand, feeling some sense of control returning. "Appreciate it." Lucas gave a half-smile. "Don't thank me yet." Back at Nathan's place, my phone buzzed. I looked down. A message from Marjorie. "Where are you?" My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. She had finally noticed. I didn't respond. Less than a minute later, another message followed. "Why did you leave?" I let out a quiet sigh. She wasn't worried about me. She wasn't reaching out to apologize. She was simply wondering why I hadn't played the usual part, standing there waiting like a fool while she danced with someone else. This was a test. I didn't play into it. I flipped my phone over and set it down. I would wait. Because soon, the truth would come out. And when it did, her regret wouldn't just be about that one night. It would reach far deeper than that. The hardest part was waiting. Each hour dragged by like a weight pressing against my chest. I was fully aware Lucas was moving quickly, but patience had never been a virtue of mine. I was desperate for clarity, for the truth. Marjorie hadn't called, only sent those 2 vague messages, and then nothing. The quiet that followed was almost more unbearable than the messages themselves. I couldn't help but wonder what was going through her mind. Did she even care that I had vanished? Nathan must have picked up on my restlessness. Without a word, he tossed me a beer and sank into the couch across from me. "You're thinking too much," he said casually. I opened the bottle, the sound barely registering. "Am I really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah." She suspects something's off, but is biding her time, waiting to see how much of a mess she'll need to clean up. I let out a bitter laugh. Damage control? That's what this is to her. Nathan shrugged like it was obvious. That's all it ever was. She's not afraid of losing you yet. That last part hit me hardest. She wasn't afraid, and she should have been. Almost instinctively, I glanced at my phone again. Nothing new. But just as I was about to set it down, it buzzed. A message from Lucas. "Lucas, meet me in an hour. You're going to want to see this." A cold wave of dread washed over me, but I didn't hesitate. "Let's go," I said, rising to my feet. Nathan didn't ask anything. He just grabbed his keys and followed me out the door. 1 hour later, I was seated across from Lucas in a shadowy booth at a nearly empty bar. He slid his phone across the table toward me. "It's worse than you think." I forced myself to look. Images, screenshots, time-stamped entries. A meticulous breakdown of everything, every moment of my wife's betrayal. Benjamin Caldwell wasn't just some guy she met at the gala. He'd been around for months. Dinners, weekend trips, even a supposed work conference that was anything but professional. And the worst part? A picture from 2 weeks ago. The two of them together, smiling, holding hands, sharing a kiss. I clenched my fists, my entire body tensing. "She's been keeping this from you for a long time," Lucas said, his tone measured. I took a deep breath, trying to stay level. This wasn't just a slip-up. It wasn't a fleeting lapse in judgment. It was calculated, intentional, and I'd had enough of being deceived. I shoved the phone back across the table. "I need all of this." Lucas nodded. "Already sent it to your inbox." Without another word, I stood up. My mind was made up. Nathan's eyes followed me. "What's the next step?" I looked straight at him, voice low but certain. She wanted to act like I didn't matter? Fine. Let's see how she handles it when I vanish for real. As I sat in the passenger seat of Nathan's truck, the truth weighed down on me like a mountain. The pictures Lucas had shown me burned behind my eyes. Marjorie's face, happy, carefree, affectionate with another man, played over and over. All while I had been at home, still believing in her. Nathan was quiet, but I could feel his concern as he glanced my way. "You doing okay?" I let out a long breath, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I'm fine." That was a lie. I wasn't anywhere close to fine. But I knew what needed to happen next. Once we arrived at Nathan's place, I didn't waste time. I walked in, powered up my laptop, and opened my inbox. Just like Lucas had promised, the files were there. Photos, timestamps, locations, a concrete record of the truth I could no longer ignore. Nathan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So? What now?" I clicked through the evidence, my jaw tightening more with each image. I'm not arguing. I'm not giving her a chance to twist this or paint some sorry excuse. Nathan smirked. "So, you're going quiet on her?" I shook my head slowly. "No. I'm letting her hang herself with her own lies." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And how's that going to work?" My fingers tapped rhythmically against the table as I thought it through. "She still hasn't called. Just sent those 2 little messages. That tells me she's fishing, trying to gauge what I know." Nathan nodded slowly. "She expects you to come crawling back like always. Like nothing's changed." "Exactly. So I'm going to let her keep thinking she's in control." A grin spread across Nathan's face. "Now we're talking." I picked up my phone and finally responded to her. "Me, we need to talk." A few minutes passed before she replied. "Marjorie, are you okay? You just left without saying anything." There it was. No apology. No acknowledgement of the truth I'd uncovered. Just a carefully crafted message designed to downplay everything. I waited 10 minutes before replying. "Me. I don't want to do this over text. I'll be home in an hour." Nathan leaned over, reading over my shoulder. "You're playing this smart." I nodded, setting the phone down. If she thinks she still has the upper hand, she won't be on guard. She'll try to lie her way out. Nathan chuckled softly. "And that's when you shut it all down." I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. Let's see just how deep this goes. I arrived at the house exactly 1 hour later. From the outside, it looked untouched. Quiet. Still. Almost like nothing had happened. But everything had shifted. I stepped inside, and there she was in the kitchen, her face painted with just enough concern to look convincing. Elliot, where have you been? I was worried. I allowed the silence to hang in the air, eyes fixed on her. She didn't reach out, didn't take a step toward me. That wasn't concern on her face, it was strategy. She was reading me, trying to figure out how deep the trouble went. I dropped my bag beside the door and folded my arms. My head had been elsewhere, lost in thought. Her brows pulled together. You just vanished. I didn't know what was going on. I tilted my head slightly. Did you even attempt to call me? That caught her off guard, just for a moment. But I noticed. I wasn't sure you wanted to talk, she replied, choosing her words with caution. You looked upset. I didn't want to push you. A lie. I took a slow breath and nodded once. Okay. She lingered in the silence, clearly expecting more from me. When none came, she shifted her stance and crossed her arms. So, do you want to talk about why you left? I met her gaze directly. Why do you think I walked out? She hesitated again, calculating. I'm not sure, she admitted. You just left. I thought we were having a good night. I nearly laughed. A good night? Really? You were dancing with him like I didn't even exist. Marjorie sighed and gave a small shake of her head. Elliot, it was just a dance. That's all. There it was, the first attempt to make it seem like nothing. I nodded, keeping my face unreadable. Just a dance. Her tone softened as she stepped a little closer. I know you're not into these events, but I didn't think it would upset you. He's only a friend. A friend. The anger curled inside me, but I didn't let it show. Calmly, I pulled out my phone and opened an email from Lucas. I held the screen up to her, letting her see the first image, her and Benjamin, caught in a close embrace, kissing. The color drained from her face. I swiped to the next photo. Different evening. Different setting. Same betrayal. Marjorie recoiled like I'd struck her. Elliot, I raised a hand to silence her. Don't. Just don't. Her lips parted, then closed again, clearly grasping for some explanation, some excuse. A way to turn it back on me. But this time, there was nothing she could say. I had every piece of evidence I needed, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it. She stood frozen in place, face pale, mouth opening and closing, clearly searching for the right words. But none came. Not this time. I let the silence stretch, making sure she felt the weight of everything she had done. For months, she had been dishonest, sneaking around, undermining our relationship, expecting me to stay clueless. But that time had passed. Eventually, she managed to whisper, Elliot, please, let me explain. I slid the phone back into my pocket and shook my head. No, you can't. She took a small step toward me. It's not what it looks like. I gave a short laugh, not from humor, but disbelief. Not what it looks like. Marjorie, I've got pictures, timestamps, locations. If you're going to insult me again with a lie, don't bother. Her lip quivered. I never wanted to hurt you. I studied her, really studied her. The woman I had given years of my life to. The one I trusted, loved, built a future with. And now, for the first time, I saw her clearly. Someone who didn't value me. Someone who treated my loyalty like a given. And suddenly, I felt nothing. No fury. No pain. Just relief. I know, I said calmly. Because you never thought I'd find out. You believed I'd always be here, no matter what. Tears filled her eyes. Elliot, please, I'm done, Marjorie. Her voice hitched. What do you mean? I exhaled slowly, letting the finality of my decision sink in. I mean, I'm finished. I'm not chasing after an explanation I don't need. I'm not standing here listening to justifications. I deserve more than this. A tear slipped down her cheek. But, I love you. For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled, and it was real. No, Marjorie. You loved knowing I'd catch you if you fell. But I'm cutting the net. Her face crumbled. But I didn't stay to witness her fall apart. I grabbed my duffel bag, the one I had packed the night before, and slung it over my shoulder. She stepped toward me, voice breaking. Elliot, please. We can talk this through. We can fix it. I shook my head. No, you'll have to live with it. I'm moving on. And with that, I stepped out the door, closing it behind me for the final time. I didn't head to Nathan's place. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove until I came across a small motel on the outskirts of town, checked in, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I exhaled. A deep, free breath. Then I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I felt unchained. I wasn't walking on glass anymore, or wondering if I was enough for someone who clearly never saw my worth. I was no longer the fallback option. I had stopped being the man who waited. Now, I was the man who moved forward. As I laid back on the motel bed, eyes on the ceiling, something hit me. Marjorie would carry the weight of her choices for the rest of her life. But me? I was only beginning to scratch the surface.